Hello everyone and welcome to another video. I'm glad you're here. This is Jennifer McGuire. So I have lately wanted to create some cards that have kind of a kaleidoscope look. I've been a big fan of kaleidoscopes since I was a kid, and today I'm going to share many examples that I was able to make. Now you could call these more like mandalas, or you could say it's more like spirograph. I'm just kind of calling them kaleidoscope just to kind of group together all of these cards that have a repetitive pattern coming from the center. These are so much fun to make, very addictive. I do use the Gina K wreath builder templates. I've used those in many videos in the past, and today is just another thing you can do with those great templates. So let's get started with my first example. I'm using this new and brilliant stamp set from Gina K Designs. It's called the Mandala Maker. Now this is a 6x8 set filled with lots of images that you can build together to create beautiful mandalas or repetitive backgrounds like I'm going to do today. I will warn you that it is very addictive to use this set, as there are an endless number of ways they can be combined to create new looks. You do really need a Gina K wreath builder stencil to help you use this, or you can just draw pencil lines to kind of guide you as you create a pattern on a background. Either way will work. I'll be using the wreath builder templates like the one you see here for today's examples. The Gina K wreath builder templates come 2 stencils in a pack. I'm using the one that's a little bit bigger, and you use a 4" by 4" piece of cardstock in it. I have it taped inside of my Misty stamping tool. Any stamping tool will work for this. I've placed a piece of 4x4 white cardstock into the center of the template, and I'm using my T-ruler to draw an X or a little plus sign in the middle of my card. This is easy to do by drawing a line down the center by connecting the tips of the template on the sides and then vertically too. When you draw those 2 little pencil lines in the center, where they cross is the center. Okay, so that's going to help me kind of decide where to start my stamps. I like to start with this little teardrop shaped stamp with a little pattern in it, but you could absolutely start with anything in that Mandala Maker stamp set. Okay, so I'll be using Gina K inks today just because they're great and bright colors, and I'll put the color of the ink there at the top of the screen. So you stamp it once, then you rotate the paper just 1 turn in the template, and then you stamp it again. And you repeat this until you have a circle of the pattern stamped. In my past videos, I've shown how you can use these with pretty much any smaller stamp images to create wreaths or fun backgrounds. Well, today we're going to go for that kaleidoscope look, where it's a repetitive geometric pattern building out from the center. Now in this case, I am just starting in the middle and then starting to add smaller images around that. I decided to do 1 image at a time, just so I could change up the colors easily and build a nice pattern. But you could put down multiple images and stamp them at once, and it makes the process go faster. This time I'm double stamping with the Ocean Mist ink, just to make the color a bit darker to go nicely with that lucky clover that we start with. And here you can see I'm just adding image by image, building my way to the corners of the paper, the edges of the paper, so that I cover the entire piece. I like how these pieces fit together in a million different ways, so you can get a different look with each card that you create. Now I'm stamping on white cardstock with different colors of dye inks. However, you could do like a colored cardstock and use heat embossing of different colors of embossing powder. There are many ways to create beautiful looks with this. You could even stamp all of these images with the black ink and then color them in with colored markers. However, what I really like about having all the images individual is that you can do everything in a different color. This is something that would be really hard to achieve with a background stamp. Okay, so once I've filled in kind of from the center out to the edges, I like to go back with the little dot images that are included in the Mandala Maker stamp set and fill in some of the little openings just to add pops of color here and there. This particular time I put down 2 dot stamps, and I'm stamping them both at once just to save me a little time. At this point, if you wanted to, you could just use an acrylic block to quickly stamp different dots in different areas of the card. It's really whatever is faster for you. Okay, in the center of this, I wanted a tiny sentiment that I could stamp on a die-cut circle. From this stamp set, I used the Hope to See You Soon. There's also a small Missing You sentiment in here that I use often. So I white heat embossed the Hope to See You Soon on a small die-cut pool-colored circle, and I added that to the center of my card. Now the cool thing about this pattern is it's fun to add small embellishments to it. I'm using Lucy's Cards Iridescent Jewels and adding them here and there with Gina K Connect adhesive, which is super strong. I'm using a jewel picker to quickly pick up the jewels and put them in the adhesive. I like the iridescent jewels because they pick up the color of whatever ink is near it or behind it, so it pretty much matches anything. And by adding the little jewels, you add a lot of sparkle. You could also do dots of like Nouveau drops or perfect pearls if you prefer. So here is that completed card. It is a 4x4 piece that I put onto a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 note card. I really like small square cards. I think they're fun. And I put them in 4.5-inch white square envelopes, and I'll link to the envelopes that I use below in the description. But you could also put them in a regular A2 envelope and it would mail just fine. Now, I really felt my creativity kind of get sparked when I was using this stamp set, so I decided to make a few more examples. So I used the images in different ways, and I did different colors. This time I did a rainbow look. I still used the same sentiment in the center, and I used the same iridescent jewels in the pattern in the background. So you can really kind of spark your creativity. Sometimes I get in a slump, and a set like this is something that you could easily just play around with to kind of get your creative juices flowing. So Lila picked out the colors on this one, and I think she did a great job. Now you could have stopped and kept more of a circular pattern without filling up the background, and instead had like a mandala look. You could cut it out and add it to a card or just leave it in the center of the card. But by completing the background, I think it gives you more of a kaleidoscope look, which I really like too. Now for this example, I used the same kind of technique, but I did it on a panel that isn't square. So this is a 4 1/4 by 5.5-inch card. And a little bit later in this video, I'll show you how to stamp a pattern on this bigger size piece. But I wanted to show you this now as it uses that Mandala Maker stamp set to fill a background with a kaleidoscope look. That Thinking of You sentiment is from a Simon Says Stamp Stripe sentiment set, which I'll show you a little bit later in this video. Now for this next example, I just wanted to show that you can use that Mandala Maker stamp set to create subtle backgrounds that kind of force your eye to the center to a focal point image. Now that focal point image on this one is from the new Gina K Designs Fruit of the Season kit. Now this kit includes this stamp set, which is 6x8, and the coordinating dies, and it also includes another 6x8 stamp set and its coordinating dies. That's a snowflake set, and I'll use it on one of my next cards. Now here's a look at the kit. Again, those are two big 6x8 stamp sets, and you have the coordinating dies in 24 sheets of cardstock. I just really like her kits because they're packed with a lot of useful things, and these sets worked great for today's examples. So I stamped the pair from one of those stamp sets and colored it in with Copic markers and die cut it with the coordinating dies. I added that to the center of my card. Now that background panel, I used the Mandala Maker stamp set and Gina K soft sand ink. I like how the soft color of the background isn't too distracting, but the pattern really draws your eye to the center of the card where that focal point image is. This is again a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 card. Now that gold heat embossed thankful sentiment is from this new Gina K Men of Faith stamp set. They've had a female version of this, and I really like all the sentiments that are included in here. They can be used in many ways to create a lot of encouraging messages, and I'm going to use some of those words on my next card. This shows that you can get a kaleidoscope look using sentiments. This actually kind of looks like a sunshine to me, but it's a great way to get a new look out of any small word stamps that you may have. So in this case, I put the little plus sign in the center of my card, and I'm using those lines as a guide to stamp my first word, which is faithful. I stamped it, and then I'm rotating it one time, stamping it again, rotating it one time, and stamping it again until I have a circle of the words formed. Then I can start adding other words in. I really wanted the word kind to be prominent, so I decided to orient that so it goes in a different direction from the other words, forming kind of a circle around my center sentiment that I'll add later. I then started to fill in the rest of the card with additional words and colors. If you're wanting to create a background similar to mine, I will link to my blog at the end of this video, and you can head over there to get photos of the cards, and that will be a good guide for you. Okay, so when I was done, I added this 4 by 4 inch piece to a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 pink note card. And then I added a Love You die cut from the Birch Press Love and You sugar script dies. I die cut them each 3 times with black cardstock, and I glued them together. Then I added them to the center of my card and put some shimmer aqua pen and some tonic crystal glaze over the words. By putting the shimmer and then the shine on top, you end up with a really cool look when it dries. There you can see how it kind of looks like a jelly bean kind of embellishment with sparkle in it. It really is nice, and it grabs your eye at the center of the card. Okay, so I don't know about you, but I spent about 99% of my childhood using a spirograph. I was obsessed with it. If you've never seen a spirograph, I will link to it below. It's the coolest thing ever. Well, I wanted to create that with my stamps, and you can do that easily with circle and oval stamps to get this kind of kaleidoscope look. I'm also going to show you how to create these patterns on a rectangle piece. I promised you earlier I would do this. This is 4 inches by 5.5, and I've put the bottom of the panel right into the corners of my template. I'm again lining my T-roller up with the 2 points on the edge of the template, and then again vertically, and that gives me a little plus sign which shows me where the center is towards that one side of the panel. So I'm putting it back into my template, and we can start our pattern. Now for this card, I'm only using oval stamps and circle stamps. And these are from the Mandala Maker stamp set that I showed you earlier, but I'm guessing you probably have other stamp sets with these shapes. I'm starting close to the center with the small oval and stamping that, rotating each time between until I have a fun kind of flower pattern. When you get really close to the center of your little piece here, where that plus sign is that we drew, you get more overlap. The farther away from the plus sign you get, the less overlap you get between images. But in this case, I want overlap so that I can create those cool patterns. So I moved out just a hair, and I'm using the bigger oval stamp. I'm stamping that with a bright blue ink, and you can see your fun pattern building. Now you could totally stop at any time, but as you know, I like to go overboard and just keep adding more and more. So I'm going to continue to do this. As you see, the farther out you get, the less overlap you get. So you'll start to find that you will want to add more and more on the outside to fill in the open area. Now sometimes I go back towards the center to add more, just to kind of balance everything out. I really want the focus to be on that center, so I want the darkest color on that. Now I can keep adding as I go out. Here I'm adding some more circles for some more overlap. And you could even do solid shapes if you want to. I'd like to try that sometime. But I thought these outline images gave me the look of a spirograph. Now, the farther out you get, the more hangs off the side of your paper. That's okay. And you'll end up stamping just on that one side of the panel, and that's okay too. Once you're done, you'll have a full panel like you see here. I just continued and I did some yellow, some orange, and some pinks just to fill in the area, and you can see all that overlap stamping and the fun pattern that you can easily create using the Wreath Builder templates. Now I trimmed that down to 4 by 5 1/4 and added it to a black note card, and I put a Just Because black sentiment strip in the center that's got white heat embossing on it. And that is from the Simon Says Stamp Jumbo Stripes stamp set. I used the Thinking of You sentiment from this on the pink card that I showed you earlier in this video. These little sentiments are perfect for nice, bold but small sentiment strips to go in the center of cards like this. So I ended up creating 2 cards with this kind of spirograph look, and I'm over the moon about them, and Lila is too, so we'll definitely be making more like this. Okay, next I wanted to show you how you can create kind of a kaleidoscope look with other images. In this case, I use snowflakes. So this is the Gina K Fruit of the Season kit stamp set. Earlier, I used the pair from the other stamp set in this kit. This is the second stamp set that's included in the Fruit of the Season kit. Again, this is a 6x8 set, so those are some large, really detailed, beautiful snowflakes. There are also small ones included, which is great because I can use them together to create kind of a kaleidoscope background. This time I'm starting with a 5.5 inch by 5.5 inch piece of white cardstock. This will allow me to trim it down to whatever I want when it's completed. Another way to find out where the focal point will be of this piece is to draw a little pencil line at 2 inches in from one side and 2 inches in from the other side. And when those two pencil lines overlap, that will be the center point. That's where your pattern will kind of start and form its way out. Since this is a bigger piece, it will kind of be up in the corner. Now in that same corner, I like to put a little X. The reason I'm putting an X there is that is the corner that will always fit into my template. Notice the other corners are hanging outside of the template. I always want the corner with the X to be in the template when I do my stamping. So I'm starting with a small snowflake, and notice my little X corner is in the template. I'm inking this up and I'll stamp this. Then I'll rotate my piece, making sure the X corner is in the template once again. As long as you always have the same corner or same side in your template, you will be able to create a beautiful pattern. Okay, so I'm going to continue to do this until I have a circle of snowflakes. And you'll see how the focal point is kind of towards the corner of this piece. That way later I can trim it down and I can have that focal point be anywhere on my card. Now on this last turn, you'll notice that your paper has to hang out of your MISTI. That's no problem at all. It still works just fine. Now I'm going in with a darker ink and stamping just a medium-sized snowflake right in the center. And notice that I'm making it so my images overlap or touch. I think that really helps with that kaleidoscope look, as opposed to kind of spacing them out, as I often do when I create the wreaths in my other videos. Now I'm taking another larger snowflake, making sure it overlaps with the snowflakes I have there already. And here you can see how even though my paper is hanging out of the template, and also that my stamp is kind of hanging off some of the sides of the paper, I still am able to stamp that repetitive pattern. You can see my X'd corner is always in the template. And here I just keep on stamping, rotating one turn each time. And I also am starting with darker inks towards the center and working out to lighter colors towards the outside. It's just another way you can create a pattern using this tool. Now I'm going in and filling in some of the open spaces. You don't have to do this, but I like to use those little dots so that I can have a continuous pattern and add more pops of color. These little dot images also help me figure out where I could place additional things like gemstones later on. Next, I'm taking the tiniest dot from the Mandala Maker stamp set, and I'm just stamping it here and there in the pattern. You could do this with your stamping tool, but at this point with the tiny little dot, you can easily go around and do it by hand. Now I'm using my trimmer to trim this down so that that snowflake, the center snowflake, is towards the top left corner of my panel. I trimmed it down to 4 by 5 1/4. Now I'm using the Birch Press Big Friend Sugar Script dies. This die set includes the word friend and the shadow. I use the shadow die to cut from some shimmer vellum. Then I die cut friend 3 times from some dark teal cardstock. And I'm gluing those 3 die cuts on top of each other for a stacked look. Now I could have done one like you see on the card there, but when you add 2 more on top of it, it really helps to make that sentiment stand out against that busy background. I'm again using liquid adhesive to put little drops on the back of our vellum die cut, hiding it behind the die cut word, and adding that right over the focal point of the card. Okay, now for the envelope, I use the new Gina K Delicate Snowflakes background stamp. Now people have asked how I do this, so I thought I'd show you. I ink up my stamp, and I'm going to stamp this just on the flap of my envelope. So I put a piece of scrap paper behind the flap. I press it down on the background stamp. I can take that scrap paper out, and then I have the pattern just on the envelope flap. You can see it was very quick and easy to do, and now I have snowflakes that match my card. I did put Aqua Shimmer, that's shimmer pen, and the tonic crystal glaze over the die cut word friend, so it has lots of shimmer and shine and stands out even more. I also put little dots of shimmer on the little dots that I have on my background pattern. And then I also used a white heat embossed sentiment strip that says "You are incredible." That is from the Simon Says Stamp sentiment stamp set. I use these little sentiments often on cards. So because we put a vellum shadow behind our die cut, and because I put the shimmer and the tonic glaze on top of the stacked die cuts, that word friend really stands out against that busy background. And this shows how you can use your snowflakes or other shapes to create repetitive kaleidoscope looking patterns. Now before I go, I wanted to show you how you really can use just about any image to create these backgrounds. In this case, I used 2 trees to create that background. You can see the 2 trees here in the Gina K Rustic Autumn stamp set. I thought this was a gorgeous set. I stamped 1 tree kind of close to the focal point, and then 1 right outside of that. And then I stamped a bunch of leaves in reds, greens, and yellows. You can see that leaf stamp up there at the top. Creates such a different look for those tree stamps. I then added a basic white heat embossed thank you sentiment to the center. I felt like I needed to keep that sentiment very simple since the background's very busy. And that thank you is from this new Concord and 9th Turnabout stamp set. I haven't been able to use this particular Turnabout stamp set in a video yet, but I really liked the sentiments, that they're small enough for a sentiment strip, but bold enough to stand out a bit more than other smaller sentiments. So that worked really well on this card. Now to add some fun to the envelope, I used the Gina K Elegant Script stamp. I'll be using this one a lot in future videos because it just adds a little bit of detail to a background without being too distracting. And I thought it worked nice on the envelope flap for this card. All right, there you have a way you can use your stamps to create kind of a kaleidoscope look, and you can get really different looks depending on the stamps you use. For the supplies that I used, I link them in my YouTube description below. Go to my blog for photos and more information. In the middle are a couple other videos I've done with those wreath builder templates. I thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope you have a good one, and we'll see you soon.